last step would be turn your phone, turn it off. That should have been the first step. We checking
Right.
the switch and making sure everything good.
That's not so funny. You be like, okay, let me go into Mars and check these phone
Exactly.
records, and okay.
Let's see
And
what's
then,
up.
and then you be like, wait a minute, can you turn your phone on and off for me? Well, that's just it. My phone won't come on. I lost my charger. Ma'am.
Those used to be the funniest conversations. 45 minutes into the call. Or like, did you do this? Yeah, I did it. Did you do that? Yeah, I did it. All right, so power your phone off and on. How am I supposed to power it off and on? No, I'm on it. So how you do everything I just told you to do? Like, come on.
My nerves. I'd be like, okay, so you want me to troubleshoot a device that isn't working, but clearly it's working because you spoke to me.
Exactly. Sounds like some relationships I know.
Right. I sent the link. Hold on. Let me try and send it again. I sent it. You're here.
Where's the Reverend Doctor at?
He said he didn't get the invite, but I sent him the same time I sent yours.
Yeah, I got mine. It said it came through.
The Reverend should be on momentarily.
As you sip your tea.
Literally tea. We should be sponsored by Golden Peak.
I wish.
Right? Listen, they got tons of dollars.
All right, so it's gonna get real tonight. You got your tissues?
Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children.
You know what I'm discovering more and more, like as I go back and watch our previous videos and then I think and meditate on it, like it's okay to be transparent about your own self. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to tell everybody else's story. Like I think that's the thing, like when you watch a lot of videos and stuff, they be like, well, my friend was dealing with this. Like, no, what you been dealing with? Like,
right.
Can we be honest for a second? What you going through?
Right. I think what happens is a lot of times people are scared that if they put themselves out there, that people won't receive them the same way. Like living your truth because it's your truth. I mean, don't go off of, and I think that's one thing that when you look at all the Bible stories, it's great to know what happened for David. It's great to know what happened for Samson. It's great to know what happened for John, Peter, and every other person in the Bible. But when you have your own testimony, I know what God did for me.
Exactly.
These are great inspirational stories. But when you have living testimonies that can tell you, hey, God did A, B, C, D, E, F, and G for me, it just makes it more realistic.
Well, in truth, though, we take those stories and we try to put them on ourselves. Well, that wasn't your journey.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You may have dealt with something similar. There's no way in the world anybody lived a lifestyle like David where he was almost killed 3 times by his mentor.
Right.
Someone that he loved.
Right.
You tell me you telling me you was in there playing a harp and somebody threw something at you trying to kill you? Like, come on.
And you kept playing the harp.
You know what I'm saying? Let's just be honest about
and he
things.
kept playing the harp. I listen. Like I have been in situations where I have been tried like that, and I'm like, look, I'm here to help you. And I failed the test. I'm like, I'm here to help you. And if you don't want to receive the help, I'm out. But
exactly.
I'm not finna stand there and continue to play the harp and be like, whoa, was that a javelin? That old angry demon? Let me continue to play. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing it. That's unrealistic.
Reverend Doctor.
Are you eating Pop-Tarts?
Huh?
Are you eating Pop-Tarts?
I have no Pop-Tarts.
Come on, Dashiki. Mm-hmm.
Wakanda forever.
Well, I'm not
forever.
Thing. You remember that part of the movie where they was doing their little shoulder thing? It reminded me of what was that? The dance. It was a dance back in the day. I can't think of what it was, but I remember how everybody used to do it. But anyway, and then there was this like little parody where anytime a Caucasian person would talk, all the black people in the room would be like, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Lord have mercy.
was funny because remember they did that on Wakanda when they was looking at him like, colonizer, why are you talking? But anyway. So John, to everyone that's watching and has been watching me and Jamont kind of shoot the breeze and talk about how, just to catch you up, we were talking about how you have to make the Bible relevant to you. Bible stories are great, but your witness needs to be, bless you.
Thank you.
Your witness needs to be your true story, like your truth. Like it's great to pull on somebody else's testimony, but what's your testimony? Like that's what we were talking about. And to our viewers, yes, there's usually John, Jamont, and myself. Keisha had a family emergency, so we're going to definitely keep her and her family in our prayers. She won't be with us tonight via podcast, vlog, but we do also want to wish Keisha a very happy birthday. Her birthday is on Valentine's Day, so she won't be with us next week either. But we love you, Keisha, and I don't know Keisha's Cash App, but we'll drop it into the description bar below once I find it out, and you can bless her as she has blessed us. So prayers to you, Key, and we're going to talk about overcoming the heartbreak of trauma. And Jamont told me to get a box of tissue. I'm not going to get a box of tissue. I am strong. And my inner thug is gonna be on the line today, so I'm not gonna cry.
Nah, we know you emotional. Let's just keep it 100.
I'm not an emotional gangster. Not.
What is that doctor go?
All right, so go for it.
Right, let's do it. So, John, did you want to start tonight? Or you good?
I'll open the dialogue with this statement. Relational trauma is not relational trauma. Relational trauma is the result of any source of trauma that we've ever experienced. It projects itself wherever it has availability, which oftentimes is with the person that we're in relationship with. Not just relational context like dating, even friendships, alliances, allegiances, all that good stuff. Any relational construct is often where the effects of trauma are projected because there's an open avenue. I think that it is important that we dialogue about that and really give that some language, because it is one of those kind of unspoken gray areas that a lot of millennials deal with. But again, kind of a thing that we've been discussing, the generation prior to us chose to live in it and suppress the truth. But as we know, the scripture says it is the truth that makes you free. And I agree with the statement that both of you made that the truth will always be the truth, but your witness is relative to you. Your witness is your eyewitness account of what has transpired, but also being able to give a hope that would inspire other people to come out of whatever type of deficit or adverse situation that they are experiencing. In my own personal experience, relationships that I've been in have all suffered as the result of my mistrust with people. That came through years of trauma in different circumstances and different stages of life. But because someone dared to get close to me and expose their vulnerabilities to me, um, they often caught the brunt of my frustration. So in hindsight, you learn that the people closest to you really are the ones that have the key to your healing. But to the broken soul, you don't have the capacity to realize and understand that and actually use that person and the connection as a tool for you. I think oftentimes what we see even in mainstream society is people become drugs. You know, the strength of the connection, the strength of the relationship doesn't heal. It only helps me to cope because I haven't mustered up the strength or I haven't been confronted to the degree that it provokes change. And if that be true, then am I really living in truth or am I living in an adapted version of truth that is applicable to me, but it takes the offense and projects it on someone else?
I think we do that a lot. But the thing is, the thing that as you were speaking, the thing that was coming to mind was especially in our lives, the things that we suppress have to come forward because what's done in the dark will come to the light. And so a lot of things that we are holding inside that we've done, experienced, gone through has to come out at some point in time. And sadly, it's usually in a relationship when somebody else is involved because we have not sat down, like you were saying earlier, and taken the time to deal with it ourselves and allow ourselves to be called out on it because nobody wants to be corrected. We all just want to go through this thing without any correction. We feel like we can, we're good. But that whatever you dealt with, like if whether it was abuse, whether it was any form of abuse, physical, sexual, anything, abuse, whether it was being left behind, whether it was, the way somebody talked to you, or they didn't hug you enough, or they didn't tell you they loved you, like all these things that you just let sit and you keep on compressing, especially us in this generation, because we are volatile. Like we will go after somebody in a quick, fast, in a hurry. We have no problem not holding our tongue. There's a lack of respect there too. So now it's easier for us to just take everything that we have built up and just let it out. And that is what's destroying relationships. So in order for us to rebuild our own hearts, because sadly, you have to sometimes forget about the other person in the relationship and deal with your stuff.
Correct.
Because we often like to push off, like when somebody asks you, well, why did this happen? Well, they did this, that, and the other. It's never, well, I did this first.
Right.
This is what I'm dealing with. I made decisions. I made choices that were not conducive to the relationship and did not help us grow, but just hurt us even more. So that thing that we've been keeping in the darkness has to be brought to the light so it can be addressed. Because honestly, the reason why a lot of people are going through repetitive cycles is because they're doing the insanity thought process. They're doing the same thing over and over and over again, thinking that it's going to change when it's not.
Right.
Correct.
I agree with you, Jamon, and I agree with you, Van, as well. I think that what happens is that sometimes the hardest person to look at is the person that stands in the mirror and looks back at you. We have been conditioned to move through life without actually taking a moment of self-reflection. You have time to deal with your job. You have that time to deal with your children if you have children. But nobody actually takes time to be like, hey, what's going on with me? How do I feel today? We've been taught, this goes back to the video that we watched last week with Nikki Giovanni and I can't think of the man's name, but Mr. Baldwin, James Baldwin, when they were having their conversation, she was like, you put on this facade, this mask in front of the world. But when you come home, I get the anger, I get all of the hate that's in you. And the reason that you get it a lot of times is that we don't have a space, a safe place to actually decompress as people. And I think one of the biggest problems is that a lot of times, and it usually takes us hitting rock bottom before we're willing to have this conversation with ourselves. But when you start to have personality cracks, is what I like to call them, where you start to see, okay, I'm being a little crazy about this, or I'm a little anxious about this, or I'm always angry about this. Nobody challenges themselves and says, what's wrong with me? What is causing this? When somebody says something that you don't like and it triggers a reaction in you, nobody stops to say, hold up, wait a minute. They said something I didn't like. It triggered an emotion in me. Where does this emotion come from? And I think that a lot of times, because we don't take the time, church has taught us how to get to God, but it hadn't really taught us how to get God to us. And what I mean by that is it hasn't taught us how to actually go and find what's wrong with us in the word and actually pull it back down to where we can apply it to our life. because a lot of times, we see scriptures, for example, casting down every weight and sin that so easily besets us. Yeah, a weight and sin can beset you, but what is that weight? What is that sin? Can you define it? And once you define whatever it is, where in the scripture do you see where somebody dealt with it and they actually were able to overcome it? And then when you actually take it from scripture, seeing how that fits into your everyday life. How can I overcome this problem with everyday a checklist of some sort? But a lot of times what people do is they get in their cycle, they get in their routine, and they don't pay it any attention. Like they're like, you know what, I'll deal with it later. And we have this deal with it later mentality. And when you finally do decide to deal with it, you're at a place of complete failure, what it feels like, because you allow all these emotions to just stack upon each other like building blocks or like Legos. And at the end of the day, you can only take so much before you crack.
That's true. I mean, we definitely have to ask fact-finding questions. Like, I was thinking, like, in the secular world, when you go to a therapist, they go through a certain list of questions so that they can actually get you to stop and think about what's the root cause of why you're here.
Right.
And because we're so saved, we think Jesus will fix it all. But the truth is, there's requirements. If you look at any of the prophets in the Bible, or David, like everybody loves to use David or Abram before he became Abraham, he always had them stop what they were doing and listen. They had to take some form of instruction, because they have to, in order to do anything, you got to stop what you're doing. You can't talk
Right.
and listen at the same time. So there has to come a point, if we're going to even, just go biblically, you have to stop at some point.
Right.
The only way Jesus was able to really speak to Jonah was to stop and put him in a big animal, in a big fish. Doesn't say what kind of fish. I ain't gonna go into all that. But he had to stop him from running and sit him in one place to minister to him. And we have to do the same thing with ourselves. We want to run and do this, that, and the other, but you got to make time to sit down and really analyze and think about and contemplate all the stuff that you went through. It's a true decompression. And just because you're saved and just because you have the Holy Ghost inside of you does not mean that you don't also warrant to sit and stop, process. It's got to be a requirement for you. That's the only way that you're going to heal. My dad works 911, and whenever they have crazy calls, it could be somebody who just committed suicide or something like that. I've heard him say this a million times. You need to stop and decompress, because you have to deal with what you just heard. You have to deal with the emotions that you have going on inside. Otherwise, the next call that you receive, you may mess something up, and that's going to mess somebody else up.
Right.
And we have to take that same thing in our relationships. We like to, we're talking about trauma. Trauma is something. It's got so many different avenues. It doesn't even have to be something big. It can be a word somebody said to you when you were 5, that you just kept on building on that one word. And now you're dealing with that trauma of that one word that you never actually got over. And John was pointing to that earlier. Like, in order for us to have good relationships, even if in order for you to have a great relationship in Christ, it takes you dealing with some things. Because although God takes us where we're at, he also wants us to acknowledge where we came from, so that we can be able to minister to people with a clear mind, a clear conscience, and also identify with what's going on with them.
Correct.
Because you don't want to be distracted and thinking about, well, I used to deal with this and I'm never getting over stuff, and then you can't minister to anybody. Like, how do you expect to save one soul when you can't even see what's wrong with that soul?
Right. I'm a firm believer in, and like I said, we've talked about this a couple of times. I don't think you have to have it all together, but there are just certain avenues that need to be healed in a sense. Like, if I am strung out on drugs, I can't really effectively help somebody else that's strung out on drugs.
Correct.
We got the same problem. I think that sometimes we get so caught up in ministry that we forget, you know what? I may be a minister or whatever, or I may be a prophet, I may be a preacher, teacher, evangelist, whatever piece I am in the fivefold, but I need healing too. And I think that one thing that I never saw growing up was people in leadership actually say, you know what? I need help too. I'm going to sit down today and I'm going to get what I need. I'm going to actually go lay before the Lord and get what I need. That's an example I never saw. I never saw that transparency growing up in church. If it was something that was done, I mean, it was done in private. Nobody ever knew. That's the reason why a lot of us had these ideas that the clergy was flawless. And then when they had these falls, they looked so great to us. And people would be like, oh man, if they didn't make it, I'm not going to make it. If there was a level of transparency that was if there was a level of transparency, a lot of people would have been like, you know what, I can get back up too. They did XYZ happen to them. And that's why I was saying we can't just give people Bible stories. We've got to give them our raw truth. We've got to give them the authentic experience of us. Because if you seem or you appear to be perfection, how am I ever going to obtain perfection myself? Because I keep seeing myself. That's how you slip into condemnation, because you're like, this is this perfect example. And here I am. I keep messing up. God isn't pleased. God isn't happy. So I just might as well be jacked up.
True. There would not be, I was just having this conversation with my mother like a week ago. Mm-hmm. There would not be so many broken people in ministry if we were transparent with each other, because it's like this: the broken are trying to heal the broken.
Right. And that goes to something that I always say, don't bleed on the sheep. You may go out and you may pick a sheep up and try and carry it, but you've smeared them with your blood. So now the sheep is left trying to resolve their issues and resolve the issues of the damage that you placed on them. Like, you got to patch yourself up before you try and mess with a sheep. And I feel like a lot of times we're so busy working that we don't even realize that we've been cut or that we're damaged. Like, you'll just float through life damaged and you don't even realize it.
And you build that false facade. Like, I mean, like I said, John hit it on the hammer. His first question, his first statement, like, we get so comfortable in living that lifestyle, and we know what the issue is. Like, I think John had said it a couple of weeks ago about, him having to deal with a broken home when he was younger. Well, he knew what the issue was. If he never addressed it, even though he knew what it was, it still was an issue.
Correct.
So anybody who came to him broken, dealing with an issue of a broken home, because he never resolved it, he could never fully get them out. He can give them a little glimpse of, okay, well, this is what I did. This is how I'm dealing with it. But if he's not fully healed, then he'll never help them get fully healed.
But here's the core of it all, that without respect to any type of fivefold affiliation, designation, whatever, humanity as a whole has an issue with vulnerability that's rooted in, and part of that is this idea that we were fed growing up called the American. It's rooted in pride, and what it tells you, that the sum total of your life is to acquire things. It's never to become. It's to have a status, not have a personality or a presence. That's the root of it all. It's always linked back to pride. Yeah. And so the first key to healing on either side of the cloth is you've got to have confrontation to the point of transformation. Confrontation that actually throws reality back in your face and helps you to understand that you are not as on and solid as what you think. And contrary to popular belief, dysfunction is not something that you can hand someone a bucket and say, come out. Not. Dysfunction is it's an altered state of consciousness, an altered state of reality. And so people that have lived and survived trauma without rectifying it wholly live dysfunctional lives. Now, that varies, how it plays out varies from person to person, but the principle is still the same, that any trauma that has set up in your heart, because that's ultimately what it seeks to devour, is the content of your heart. It's always going to manifest as dysfunctional behavior, dysfunctional living.
And another piece of that is that dysfunction is a lifestyle. So when it comes to actually living, like people who live in dysfunction have become accustomed to it. So when you point out their dysfunction, or if someone ever comes into their circle and says, hey, you do realize that that's dysfunctional, like that's not normal. If that's all I've ever seen, you appear to be attacking me.
Correct.
And for example, we'll just, and this isn't pick on John night, but because that example was thrown out there. If you lived in a home and you saw things that you said that your parents, it was infidelity. If I lived in a home and I saw lies and infidelity, part of me is gonna feel like, oh, well, that's a part of a relationship. That's normal. And when somebody introduces me to what is normal and says, hey, that's not normal. Normal is a 2-parent home where they love each other and they take care of their kids and they do this and they do yada, yada, yada. Just using that as an example, you're going to be like, but that wasn't my normal, and who are you to say that your normal is better than my normal? So
Right.
it puts people, you have to be careful how you confront somebody's dysfunction, because their dysfunction, remember, is a lifestyle. You can show somebody a better way, but you cannot impose upon them what you view to be better until they're ready, because they have to get to a place where the dysfunction is too much. They're tired of it. And like I said, sadly, again, it goes back to what John said about pride. Sadly, you have to, most of the time, we as people have to become bankrupt, where we can no longer accept deposits from all of the other dysfunction around us before we realize, I need help. Something isn't right. I need help. And it's sad that we have to get to like that low level, but it's because of pride. And as the scripture says, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. A lot of times we have to get to a place where we have just hit rock bottom before anybody can come in and rescue us. Shouldn't have to get to that point, but a lot of times it does.
And let me while you were speaking, also, can I be transparent for a moment?
Sure.
Is that okay? All
Take
right.
your
So
time.
all right. So I want to talk, because there's also, when you talk about dysfunction, there's also generational curses that are a part of that dysfunction. And you mentioned that how it can be passed on from generation to generation,
Right.
but there can also be generational issues that you may not be aware of. So, all right, so I'll take for me. So, at one point in one of my relationships, I was unfaithful, right? So, in that unfaithfulness, there were kids that were in the environment as well. And so, I tried to hide my unfaithfulness so that the kids didn't see it. Because, okay, so as a man, I want to tell my kid, because I have a son and a daughter, so I want my daughter to be treated like a queen. I would never want somebody to be have infidelity in her relationship with her. And the same thing with my son. I want him to be able to treat the woman that he's with respect and do what's right. But yet I wasn't living that same lifestyle, because I never dealt with the drama that happened when somebody cheated on me. I thought it was, so I started making these, it's okay. I made this realm of excuses. Oh, it's fine. I'll be forgiven. Everybody will be okay. But I had to come to a realization that if I kept on living that kind of lifestyle, it's going to affect the next generation that's there. So he's going to automatically, no fault of his own, inherit a trauma that he doesn't need to inherit. And we don't talk about that.
That's true.
What's interesting is that, if this is the example that I have this discussion with people, using this thought, that if, say, I am a circle, right, and there are 4 parts of me, each part equally shares 25% of my person. Okay, if someone comes into my life and there is infidelity, there's a part of me that leaves with them.
Mhm.
And there's this track of thought that tells us that I can only get back that piece of me if I follow the same avenue in which it was taken. And so a lot of times in infidelity, you only fall into that trap because you're looking for what you don't know is missing.
Right.
Correct.
You can't adequately identify the part of your personhood that was taken by another individual. And that's what we look for in someone else. But as life and luck would have it, you always run into a good old psycho.
Come
I mean,
on,
in the history of ever, have you cheated on someone you were dating and married to, and you like ran into the perfect person? Nah, bruh. It don't go down like that.
Nope. Nope.
But oftentimes, as life would have, that cycle will help put you back into perspective. They will help to remind you of who you are. Because after so long, that dysfunction in them is going to start to speak loudly.
Yep.
And here's the reality. It's like you're only looking, going back to the working example I gave, you're looking for that 25%. Okay, well, what happens when the 25% that you're looking for and that other person, they're only willing to give you 15? Or or this new person that you've got is trying to take 50 or 75, and you're only willing to give them 10 or 15, 20 or 25. Then what happens? We have this disproportionate relationship where we're not fulfilling either person's needs or wants. All we're doing is putting bandages on wounds that have been created and have been given permission to fester for years and years and years. So the issue of infidelity, it goes beyond just the physical act. It's now my emotions become entrapped. And I open myself and become vulnerable with someone that does not have discernment enough to decode my dysfunction and help me walk out of it. So essentially it just perpetuates the same cycle.
And it's crazy because we don't think in that nature at all.
Correct.
And
We
to go
don't.
back to what you were saying about the pieces of a circle, when you think about it, whoever took your 25%, as you said, when you go out looking, what you're going to find is somebody that's missing 25% too.
Exactly.
You're never going to find, like you said, a whole, you're going to always find a psycho. You're never going to find a whole person because, as the scripture says, deep calls out to deep. Like your brokenness is going to call out to brokenness. The piece of you that is searching for validation is going to find something else that's searching for validation. It's
Correct.
just like it's like a homing device in the spirit
Right.
realm. It's like literally like I am out here looking to be filled because I'm broken, and you're going to attract somebody that's looking to be filled because they're broken. This is how somebody who with seemingly right sense can see a man who's married, befriend that man that's married, knowing that they're married, and still find themselves in the bed with that man. It's all because they see a brokenness in them that's attracted to a brokenness in them. And now you've got two broken people that have connected and formed some type of soul tie or bond. And now they're trying to figure out, what do I do? Because this ain't really what I want. This ain't really where I'm supposed to be. But now I'm connected and I'm stuck.
That's
And
correct. And to go ahead.
no, go ahead.
And to add on to something I stated earlier, the first key to rectifying that trauma is to confront it to the point of transformation. But it also has to be stated that you can only confront yourself in the presence of true
Right.
company, people that you can divulge your truth to, and you trust that they're going to be integral with it.
Right.
And that's
The,
the issue though too. Like we don't
it's,
trust
it's
people.
exactly.
We don't.
But
Like
I mean, rightfully so though. If
yeah.
you because you don't just fall into adultery. Like something a long time ago happened, or something opened up in you that created this need and this want for companionship that's illicit.
Or it's
Right.
a
That's not an
false
innate
ideology.
desire. That it's stimuli is from some other place.
Yeah. Or it's definitely a false ideology. I know I was having this conversation earlier with a friend of mine, and I was just stating how I would create in my mind these new rules of how to have a relationship that would suit me because I wanted to do something that wasn't right. So I would justify, that's the word I'm looking for. I would justify my actions and create I've created this whole false world that
Right.
doesn't exist that says
Right.
it's okay to do what I want to do when I want to do it because we always go back to God gave me grace. I can always get grace. Somebody else will have grace for me. And that's not how this works.
Grace covers your ignorance.
Right.
Thank you. But
And
you
then,
know what? But we've been taught so long just the word grace with no understanding of what grace means.
right. And I think it's so amazing how we can know the truth and we will take the truth and pervert it,
Mm-hmm.
manipulate it, and transform it into something that it's not and apply it to something that it shouldn't be applied to, all in the sake of covering our own selves.
Yeah, it's true.
And, and literally, we will paint a narrative. And like you said, we will paint an illusion, paint a narrative, and rewrite the Bible to fit our situation, knowing good and well that ain't what God meant, knowing good and well that just from a moral standpoint, you ain't even gotta know God or understand God, but from a moral perspective, you know that lying, you're taught as a child that lying is wrong, but you will lie to your significant other, you'll lie to yourself.
Yeah.
I think the biggest, like the most, if somebody deceives me, that's one thing, but the lies I tell myself and believe, those are the worst lies of all because I know the truth. And if I know the truth and I still would like to create a lie or an illusion and believe it for myself, that's the biggest deceit of all.
It's scary
Right.
that we create our own illusions like that. It's scary that we can convince our own selves that it's okay. That's a scary
Mm-hmm.
thought because when you've gotten to that point, you can do anything and convince yourself. Because
Right.
I'm one of those people where I may not tell you a full lie, I'll tell you a partial truth and a lie. So
Alive. Mm-hmm.
like if I was hanging with my boys, but I was with another girl before that, I'll say I was hanging with my boys, but I've completely omitted what I did 15 minutes before hanging out with my boys. And
Right.
and in my mind, I never lied to you. And then in my own brain, I'm like, oh yeah, that's all I was doing. I didn't do
Right.
anything wrong. It's,
True. And another
But
thing that trauma does, and I can say this like from my own experience, trauma becomes like a cocoon. And you wrap yourself into this ideology that you create. And I will preach this truth until the day that I die. Whatever you behold has the power to disciple you. If your dysfunction is at the forefront of your mind, your dysfunction is going to talk to you. And the more
Mhm.
you begin to live in that dysfunction, it's going to reshape your entire existence. And so not only do you have to confront it to the point that you transform and surround yourself with certain people, you have to be vulnerable with those same individuals and allow them to tell you what is on and what's off. There's a lot of us that are off and we swear we on, and we're
Yeah,
not.
right.
yeah.
Absolutely right.
So what are some tools that we can offer people? Like Jay, what are some things that you've done that have allowed you to heal from some of the trauma that you've actually dealt with? And I want you to give me like things that you did biblically and self steps that you've taken yourself to get better and deal with that trauma.
The 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 main thing that I did, I always found myself in worship. Um, when I can't, shame will keep you out of the place of prayer. Shame will always prevent you from praying because you feel like you've fallen from this place that you should be at, and you feel like you are a disgrace before the Lord. But the thing that worship does, it puts you in reminder of who God is. And in the place of worship is where he pours his love on you. So even in your fault, your fallen state, he reminds you that you are still his beloved and he is married to the backslider. So at all points in time, he's never ever going to withdraw his love from you. That was a major key that really brought me out of a shady, just kind of dark area that I was in. But then the second piece, I had to learn to not accept labels that were placed on me. Because if your mind is compromised, and you live in this altered state of reality, whatever people say about you or say to you becomes the truth that you believe concerning yourself. And the only way that I could successfully do that is to just shut out voices and to spend time alone. There, when I tell you, like, dude, I literally had to like go walk in the park by myself, go eat dinner by myself, do seemingly innocent things by myself. Because what that helped me to learn is what I like and what I don't like. Sometimes in trauma and in shame, your your appetites are conformed to that of another, or whatever voice is kind of feeding into your dysfunction. And you have to be very deliberate about um, distancing yourself from that source. And again, in the place of worship is where you find the power to conform, not unto your own self, but you conform unto God's will and God's desire for your life. But then that's only part of it. Okay, you get the information from heaven. Yeah, okay, now you have to walk that out. You practice put things in place. Another thing that I did, and like I never ever would have considered this, but one day I felt led of the Lord to reach out to people that I had dated in times past. This is just one aspect. People that I dated in times past, and like people that I knew that had wronged me, and express forgiveness to them. And that really broke a lot that was on my heart because I carried offense for years and years and years and years. And that offense began to pour out on other people that were strategically thrown into my life to help me heal. But and offense is one of those voices that will speak to you, and it always makes you okay. Um, Offense is one of those voices, one of those vices that will always speak to you, and it will make you look at people with kind of that third eye open piece. Um, but really being honest and being transparent with myself about the fact that I hate my present reality. And then when you take in the revelation that you've received from the Holy Spirit, you realize I don't have to live like this. I don't have to be a person. In fact, it was never meant for me to be this person. If I be honest, I don't know how to dissociate myself from these behaviors that are indicative of who I was. But I now have this understanding that there's a whole new person that he's trying to bring to the forefront. And that becomes what you protect. You always protect the revelation that God gives you. You always protect whatever information.
Hung up on the other connection.
No. What happened was Google threw up a message and hung up.
Okay. Was we getting too spiritual for him?
I guess Google was like, enough of that. That was not me. Like I was listening to John talk, and then Google was like ending connection and just hung up.
All right. Oh, go ahead, John. Finish that last statement.
Yeah, what John was saying, I think you were at the part where you were like, you reached out to your exes.
Oh, we passed that. We way past that.
But that's like that's when it said Google is now hanging up. I'm just telling you.
The last point that I was making is that you protect in the place of worship, whatever revelation or insight that God gives you about the person that He's trying to cause to emerge. That's what you pattern your life from. It's not people's opinions. You don't. No. People's opinions is why you end up in the place that you're in the first place. But whatever the Holy Spirit speaks to you, or whatever pictures or images that He puts in your mind concerning this new person and His idea of you, that's what you pattern your everyday life after. For instance, if you, just because it's what we throw out, if you struggle with adultery and, lust and fornication or whatever, okay, wisdom tells me don't go to the one place where there's an ample amount of opportunity. Walmart.
What you need? You need groceries.
Don't go to the mall.
Wow.
Just saying.
You can't just sit in the house, John.
For teaching, no. But for teaching purposes,
I'm kidding.
You have
it makes sense.
I'm kidding.
You have to do things that challenge the norm that you once knew. So, for instance, if my vice is lust, I'm not going to go to a place where it's easy for me to be drawn into temptation, even in an innocent place. I'll even say this: if lust is one of your issues that you dealt with, you can't even go to everybody's church. You can't go to every concert. You can't, you can't do that.
Well, and I want to go back to something you said earlier, John, too. Like you heard from Holy Spirit to go back and call your exes. The same way you heard from Holy Spirit for then, He'll tell you whether or not to go to a venue or not. He'll tell you.
Yeah.
He'll direct you on what the next move is, especially if you're dealing with something. Because if you truly say, Lord, I surrender to you, I want to be healed of this problem. I'm identifying the problem. I know what it is. I need you to lead me and guide me. He will literally lead you and guide you and take you on the right path.
Correct.
To make sure you don't encounter anything like that.
Correct.
And then once you've accomplished this, yes, the enemy's going to come at you left, right, up, down. It's going to happen, but you'll be better equipped to be able to swerve it and not take it head on.
He is the good shepherd for that very reason.
And so, Tara, it's your turn now.
What I was going to say is when John was mentioning there are certain places that you don't go. I think that for me, what worked best was having an accountability partner. Having people in my circle that knew my story and knew my history, and knew, what was a trigger for me, what wasn't. Having those people that, and what I mean by having an accountability partner, doesn't mean you have to necessarily tell them all your business or be like, hey, I'm going to the store if I don't 15 minutes. Like, I'm not saying like that. But what I mean is knowing, okay, I was thinking, just like John said, for example, a church. I was thinking about visiting this particular church. If you know that you have an issue with dealing with, we'll just use something random, for example, if you have an issue with musicians where you just can't help yourself, you always caught up with musicians, it might not be the smartest idea for you to go to a midnight musical.
Amen.
Might not be the smartest thing for you to do.
Well, the thing in that is midnight. That's the word there you said was midnight. That midnight is always a problem.
Right, because that is the witching hour. So that's when the enemy is up to his best incantations and his best foolishness. But anyway, we ain't here to talk about watches and intercessory prayer. Talking about overcoming trauma. So what I was saying is that it may not be the best idea to be going to a musical if I know that I just have a thing for church musicians. So an accountability partner, I don't though. I don't. I've been in church all my life. I know about them. But an accountability partner would tell you, hey, if you want to go, we can go. You don't need to go by yourself.
Correct.
And the beautiful thing about accountability partners is they can peep stuff, especially if they save. A saved accountability partner can save your life because they can peep something long before you catch it. Because honestly, when it's your vice, when it's the thing that moves you in either direction, you will literally turn all your blinders on and not see it and be like, oh my God, really? You will bird box yourself and be like, oh my God, I didn't know that they was flirting with me. I was flirting back for real. Like you will turn dumb about yourself when put in a situation that you used to like. But if you're serious about your deliverance, you don't mind somebody saying, hey, nah, you don't need to go there. Or if we going, okay, we going. So what time is it? Because we going. Because people who really care about your destiny and care about where you're going and where you're trying to get in life won't allow you to even self-sabotage yourself.
Correct.
So I think that was one of the things that really helped me from a natural perspective. From a spiritual perspective, like I told you guys, my from a child, I was taught, and it's so funny that I was taught to pray by my grandmother. My grandma is the one who actually taught me to pray. And what's so funny about it is that she wasn't really like every Sunday, like she went deep in the church, like how my mom and dad are deep in the church. But I learned to pray through her. And I mean, grandma lived through some stuff, so grandma, trust me, like knew how to pray. And I think that is what prayer and worship really were the things. And the reason why I say that is because she taught me to pray. And then the first scripture she ever taught me was in John. Now is the time when true worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. And so my foundation was prayer and worship coupled together. So I think that for me, a lot of times is I will put on, and it's so funny, before we came here, I literally did this. And then I got the call from Keisha. I was like, see, God, you so good. I was already prepared for this. But being able to put on an instrumental and just go in, like that's something that I live for, is putting on an instrumental gospel track and just going in and praying. Because in that warring or in that conversation between me and God, I find out what his agenda is for me and what it is that he needs Tara to work on, or what it is that he needs Tara to travail through, or what it is that he wants Tara to do for the day, or even not even necessarily Tara. What is his agenda for the world? What is his agenda for the places that Tara is going to walk into for the day? And how can Tara navigate those avenues adequately and not bring him shame, but bring him glory? So I think that really tapping into what God's purpose for me is for the day, and literally commanding my day, which is one of the instrumentals we listen to, but commanding my day from the top of my day, not praying when I get in a situation, but praying prior to me even stepping foot out of my bed, is what allows me to have that connection in that, that mind frame starting the day. And aside from that, I honestly think that, like I said, the worship piece, I will sing on key, off key, under the key, around the key, in my own time, in my privacy, in my own home. And it's just because it's me and God. And I think that the intimacy that me and God share is what keeps me on track. Because at the end of the day, when you realize who God is to you and what he does for you, and not even necessarily what he does for you, but just blessing him for who he is, there's a level of relationship that you develop with him that makes you even more accountable. And you'll see yourself begin to wean off of the accountability partner because you just want to make God happy. You want to make your father happy. So I think that for me, the pieces that actually really just help me out spiritually and naturally is having open communication with God about me. And the crazy thing is that I know a lot of times people think you have to have these long, eloquent soliloquies when you speak to God. It's got to be in verse or iambic pentameter, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Like sometimes I talk to God, I'll be like, bro, I'm messed up. Like, I mean, you just talk. It's a conversation. It doesn't have to have a particular strategy to it. Prayer is literally a conversation. And I think that a lot of times people don't feel worthy to go to God in prayer. They feel like they're too messed up or too jacked up to be able to talk to him. But here, just like John said, he's married to the backslider, and he makes intercession for us in the midst of our foolishness. So I think that if people could just really understand that prayer is literal communication about my situation, if we can understand that, then it would free us up to be able to deal with trauma. And it would free us up to be open to deal with the pride that stops us from wanting to deal with ourselves. So that's me.
That's what's up.
What about you, Jamon?
All right, so I am, so this for the spiritual aspect. So I am a teacher. I am a minister. I can be a preacher sometimes. I do operate in the fivefold. So for me, like music is definitely, worship is good. That's something that I do tap into. But for me, I have to get into the word. Like I have to get into the word, because the word is where I normally find the revelation that I need, or even and the reminders I need of who I am. Because I when I'm dealing with heartache or pain, I'm trying to deal with it the way the world does. And so what God has shown me is that if I just stop everything that I'm doing and just get in his word, I will hear his voice so clearly, and I'll be able to deal with that trauma. I'll be able to deal with the emotions that are involved, and I'll be able to really be healed and be able to move forward. But it comes from his word. And once I get into his word, then I feel more comfortable about prayer, because in prayer you can speak the word. So
Right.
now that I'm replenished with the word in my belly, now as I pray and I can speak the word in my prayers, and then which prayer is a part of worshiping. So then I can enter into worship, and so everything works together. But it all starts for me spiritually is when I'm in my word. And then when I'm not in my word and I'm struggling, I have people that I can reach out. I have mentors that I reach out to. I have, like you guys like to call them, life coaches. I have people, and I also go to my pastors, which they are my parents. But there's nobody who's going to have a greater love for you than the shepherd of the flock. So I go to my pastor and I let him know what's going on, and I share with him things that are going on, and I'm still developing this. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible, because I know that his goal is not just for me to be okay. His goal is for me to be able to live a holistic life in my mind, in my body, in my soul, in my spirit. He wants everything to be whole. So I know when I go to him, and also to my mentor, who's an elder, those are important to me. And that's how in the secular world, that's what it is. Sometimes I used to go to a therapist before I really got, because a therapist can't tell on me. You know what I'm saying? Like he can't snitch. And so it was easy to just go to a therapist and be like, hey, yo, listen, these are the X, Y. I can be as honest as I want with you, because you can't judge me. Well, you could judge me, but you can't say nothing about me. You can't share this information with anybody. Like, this is between me and you.
Come on, HIPAA compliancy.
Exactly. So that was something that I had to start doing for myself. I had to go talk to somebody, because sometimes there are things that we deal with that are not just in the spiritual realm. And as saved folks, me in particular, I had to realize that. Like, I'm dealing with real world issues. Don't think about what's going on in the church. Don't think about what your title is. Like John said, like, I got the title of minister. And if people could see me the day that I got ordained, I sat there like I was so ungrateful to be called a minister, because I took the stigma of what minister comes with. I took the fact that, okay, now people are going to have me to a higher standard. And the thing that God had to reveal to me is, it's not about the title. You have an assignment, whether your name is minister in front of it or if it's just Jamont. And he had to really deal with that with me. And so, like, when people call me, a lot of people call me Bishop. That's why it was funny when John called me Bishop. A lot of people call me Bishop.
Bishop.
And And if people understood what a bishop does and what the responsibility of a bishop is, like I know what it is, so it doesn't affect me. But somebody may not know what it is, and then when they discover, they're like, "Oh, you putting all that on my shoulders?" And God really just really explained to me, Jamal, I don't care what the title is in front of your name. You're still my chosen. You still have a purpose on this earth. You have a responsibility and you have an assignment. That is all I require of you. That's it. Don't worry about the titles.
You're absolutely right.
So those are the two ways that I dealt with. Listen, the word is definitely my friend, and it's odd because I'm not one that memorizes verses very well. I can tell you what the scripture is about. I can tell you where to, a roundabout where to go, but I know for me, but it's still in my heart. So
Right.
when I share with people, I'm sharing with them what's on my heart, what's in my, what God has imparted in me to deliver to them, and that helps you rebalance, refocus, because we have to do. If you don't rebalance and refocus after you've established what the issue is and resolved it, you're going to fall right back into that same temptation, like you said earlier.
I want to throw out one more thing that has been the core of this whole healing journey I've been on. Talk. You, talk.
Yeah.
Find you one, two, or three people that you would trust with your life and talk. And I used to be one of those people that lived in silence. But then out of nowhere, like these just random bursts of boldness would just like come over me. And I would just talk about whatever was going through my mind, whatever was kind of, on my heart, even, and that would segue into unresolved issues that I really wanted to discuss. I'm telling you, man, like my pastors will tell you, there have been so many times where I just like showed up at their house with a box of chicken and would be over there for 4 or 5 hours just talking. And that's what we would do. We would sit on the sofa or sit at the dining room table, eating chicken with some purple Kool-Aid and talking. Those simple metrics have produced so much healing for me because it's taught me how to not do this. It's taught me how to trust people again. And for me, trust is a issue that I've dealt with for about 18 years, and I just turned 29.
For a large
And
portion of your life.
yeah,
As
yeah,
yeah, it's
and
it's crazy. It became a part of you, right?
it literally does. The lack of ability to trust, it makes you guarded in relationships, makes you guarded in friendships. People only, up until like the last few years of my life, a lot of people knew certain things about me, but there were very few people that knew the sum total of who I was.
Mhm.
And the way that God just like broke the shell is He threw someone in my life that could literally decode me to me and could speak my language to me, and I understand fluently what they were trying to say.
Mhm.
And my response to that was to continue to talk and to continue to be vulnerable and to continue to be honest and continue to be accountable. If you, anyone, like whoever is watching this, if you really are seeking change, if you are seeking to do something different and you're like, I'm telling you, please hear me, you have to become okay with your life becoming uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You have to be okay with allowing someone the grace and the opportunity to look into your heart and look into your soul and deal with whatever issues are plaguing you. You can't, we try to self diagnose ourselves all the time, but our diagnosis is just another label that we put on ourselves.
Mhm.
Because you think you have unforgiveness in your heart, no, you have hatred. Or you think that you have, I don't know, that you're indecisive. No, you're double minded,
Right.
and it takes an outsider's perspective that's mature. Let me qualify that statement. that's mature and disciplined to be able to offer you any type of guidance and assistance.
Yeah.
If at that point you have to commit to this journey that regardless as to what comes up against you, you're going to stay the process. You're going to stay in this place of information. You're going to stay in this place of vulnerability. And I'm telling you from my own personal experience, literally will radically transform your entire life.
Very true.
I think that one thing that we have to do as people is we have to realize that the only way to be healed is to be broken. Like you literally you have to go somewhere and allow people, like you said, to actually see you for you, and you have to face those harsh truths. Like one thing that I know a lot of people, the one question that you can ask people to really just break them down, and it's not necessarily to break them down mentally, but to get them to really be like, let me take a reflective look at myself, is, do you like you? Like that's the, like, for me, that's the first question that I ask people. Do you like you? What do you like about you? Do you love you? What do you love about you? And most of the time when people are in a place of indecisiveness, people don't understand that question. And they'll sit and they'll think about it and they'll be like, yeah, I love myself. Okay, so what do you love about you?
I
If
don't
you
know.
can't, if you can't give that answer readily, then you need to stop and think. Like, you really need to stop and do some self-evaluation. And you may find out that you don't love yourself. And it's okay if you don't love yourself, because it's the job of whoever is looking at you to get you to a place where you can get some reconciliation about who you are and who you were created to be and who you were designed to be. Another thing that I wanted to say was that, oh, I just was thinking of it and I just lost it. But one of the things that I wanted to say too is that a lot of times that we forget that we're the sum total of everything that's ever happened to us. And you carry everything that ever happened to you. You carry when you were on the playground and little Susie told you, I'm not your friend anymore. And she went and became friends with little Jane. You carry with you when you failed your first test and you were like, oh my God, I'm a failure. You carry with you when you get your first pimple and somebody's making fun of it on a school bus. You carry with you the disappointment of a bad relationship. You carry all of this stuff with you, and all of it makes who stands in front of us today. And you've got to go back and deal with those little bitty pieces. Everything is something that's building upon something else. You've got to go back and deal with the broken kid. You've got to go back and deal with the hurt child. You've got to go back and deal with, well, Susie took my friend. How did that make me feel? It made me feel rejected or neglected or unwanted. You've got to deal with every little nuance that has shaped who you've become today.
True.
So, in essence, what we're saying is if you want to have a successful relationship, you have to deal with everything that's ever occurred to you up to that point.
Right.
And you may not be 100% healthy from it, but at least be in a progressive track toward wholeness. Like the key to, and I kind of come back to the original statement that I made when we started our discussion, is that like relational trauma is not relational trauma. Relational trauma stems from everything that you've ever experienced. What happens is that someone says something or someone does something that reminds you of back when.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know the anger that you knew back then, it surfaces in that moment.
And I want to only hop back onto something Tara had said earlier. She said the only way that you can really be healed is to be broken, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the first thing that came to my mind is if you ever seen somebody break their leg or parts of their foot, sometimes what the doctor has to do is has to make another break, even though you're already in pain,
Right.
even though you're already hurting, even though we know this needs to be fixed. They have to break it again to properly realign it so that it grows back correctly.
Absolutely.
And that is how we have to think of ourselves. Yes, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be painful. It's not gonna be comfortable. As John was saying, sometimes you just have to understand how to live in and my dad also says this too. My pastor, he says, you have to be comfortable in uncomfortability. You have to be able to sustain yourself in that moment, because if you can't withstand that little bit of pain, or even a lot of pain that you're going to go through, then you're never going to reach that healing, like everybody's been saying tonight, which is what we all want. Nobody wants to walk around here messed up. Nobody wants to walk around frustrated, uncomfortable, unhappy. Why would you want to walk that way? No, we don't want it. And we don't want to bring it into our next relationship. And we don't want the next person to have to recover from the madness that we brought them. Because we can put that on people. And you don't want to do that. And then my second thing was, Tara was talking about how looking in the mirror, and do you love yourself, and do you like yourself? And the crazy thing is, there are a lot of people who can say yes, and they'll give you a run off of things that they've rehearsed.
Correct.
And they will never really understand, or until they're willing to really dig in there and do true mirror ministry and say, I am not the best person sometimes. I don't like this about myself. But they've been rehearsing it for so long, they can give you an answer, yes, and they can give you a runoff of what they like about themselves. But in truth, they have a mean heart, a mean spirit. They don't love everybody like they're supposed to. They're the first ones to want to jump in your face when something goes up, even though they don't know what the situation is. Like, these are things that they will not address because they have in their mind, they have programmed themselves where I love the way, this is who God made, my favorite phrase, this is who God made me to be. So God made you to be broken? No. God made you to be a whole person, not just a part of a person. And so we just have to be mindful of that, because when you were saying that, I'm seeing these images of people standing in the mirror and looking at themselves. You take the before picture when you work out, and then months later, or whatever your goal point is, you take the second picture. Well, in the first picture, you know what you don't like, but you're not going to say it, not out loud at least.
Right.
And then you get to, but then after you've gone through all this work and you see the final product, and you're like, yeah, I'm glad that looks better. I'm glad that I don't have the gut anymore, or I don't have the rolls in the back of my head anymore, or all these things.
I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Only you. But
you said in the back of your head, that took me out. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
These are things that we at the end of it, we will look at it and be like, yes, I really did need to do work on myself. But we don't want to be honest, because we don't want to be transparent, because we don't want to talk. And because we don't want to talk, we just rather keep on hurting people.
And that just goes back to what we said, that the worst lie you can believe is the lie that you tell yourself.
Yep.
Because the one who deceives themselves is the biggest. I mean, I think the phrase goes, he who deceives himself is the biggest fool of all, because nobody else can fool you. If you lie to yourself, what anybody else says doesn't matter. And another thing that I wanted to say, because when you were talking, it made me think of it. When you think about meteorologists and people who do, storm tracking and stuff like that, I grew up in North Carolina, so hurricane season is like a big thing, where they, even in school, they give you the sheet and they teach you how to track a storm and stuff like that. A lot of times people are walking through life in the eye of a storm. All we know is that with hurricanes, the calmest part is in the middle of a storm. So you walk around with this eye of the storm mentality, where you're literally raging. You're swirling, you're going around, you're cyclonic, you got your movement, you got your 85 mile per hour winds blowing around you. But we get to see the eye of your storm. That's what you portray on the outside. But let somebody walk into that thing and they finna get turned all kind of ways upside down. I mean, and what's so crazy is when you look at people like a hurricane, we all know that hurricanes can trigger tornadoes, hurricanes can trigger lightning, they can trigger floods, they can trigger hail damage, all kinds of stuff. And when they leave a path of destruction. People are like hurricanes. They seem calm, they seem great, but you never know exactly what type of damage you'll sustain until that bad boy hits. So I think that a lot of times what we need to do is we need to realize, hey, before you even get into a relationship, we need to realize and determine what am I dealing with? What trauma is wrapping around or circulating this person? And a lot of times people fall victim to trauma. They decide they're going to just tap out of life. It is what it is. I am who I am. Like Jamont was saying, I am who I am. This is how I'm made. This is the way God made me. If you don't like it, only God can judge. I hate that. Only God can judge me. Well, you should be a little nervous if God is the only person that can judge you. But people love to say that. And what you fail to realize is that's just a person that's saying, I have accepted that I am messed up and I refuse to make a decision to change. But what people fail to realize is that indecisiveness is indeed a decision, and you will have to live the outcome of your indecisiveness. Your failure to change will produce results. Your failure to realize that you need to change will produce results, just as it would if you decided to make a change. But people really don't understand that, and they walk through life broken. And I really feel like this whole conversation is an outcry to people in our generation to stop walking around broken. You don't have to be this way. Jesus didn't die for this. You do not have to walk through life broken. There's a balm in Gilead that is looking to heal people. And even with your basic foundational, you ain't even got to go to church to understand that you don't deserve to walk through life broken. You deserve to be healed. You deserve to truly smile from your heart. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to have the best of the best of the best with honors. Like, you deserve that. But somewhere in our mind, trauma has tricked us, and the enemy has crept in and made us feel that we deserve whatever happens. Whatever happens, happens. Like people say, it is what it is. No, it's not. It is what I say it is. It is what I dream it to be. I make life manifest for me. And that passive, whatever happens, happens mentality is because at some point trauma hit your life and you're like, who hurt you? What hurt you? Because for me to just allow anything in life to happen, or allow life to figure itself out and let happenstance determine my future, that means that I've given up at some point. And we've got to get back to that root cause. What made you give up?
And let me, and because we've talked about all that, but let me also add in there what life is like after the trauma, after the healing. Because I mean, I know we're going to be winding down soon, but we keep on saying you don't have to live this way and it's not meant for you, but there's a joy behind it all. I know for me personally, I dealt with a lot of trauma. I dealt with a lot of lying, disappointment, manipulating. Oh man, that was a big one. And it hurt me. But the crazy thing is I was doing it to myself also. And then once I finally figured things out, once I finally figured out that I can be fixed, in the essence of I can reach out to my God, talk to my God, have a relationship with my God, and he'll listen to me and he'll walk me through the process of healing. Now I walk with a joy. I can encounter problems and those problems not defeat me. So there's a joy that comes after. There's a peace. I remember after one of the harder breakups that I've had, I fell into a state of depression. And now we don't like to admit depression happens, but I fell into a state of depression. And I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to deal with anybody. I didn't want to preach. I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to be by myself. But God stepped in and he reminded me of who I was. And he said, okay, we got to take these broken pieces and fix them.
And the moment he did that, doors started opening for me. I started reconnecting with other people that had my best interest at heart, who reminded me of who I was. And that's the thing. He will put people around you to remind you of how important you are to him. And you don't have to stray away. You don't have to continue walking in that. But I'm a living witness that you can make it. Because as many times as I've wanted to take my own life, or wish that somebody else would take my own life, or wish that I would wake up and then this world this all would have been a dream. Now I can wake up and I can thank God for it. Like Tara was saying, get into that, thanking him from the beginning. I can thank him now and literally be appreciative that I'm alive, that people know who I am, that people are caring about me, that I care about other people. Because it's not a one-sided thing. When you get healed, you want other people to be healed. So you want to talk to other people. You want to show them the love of God. You want to show them your love as well.
Right.
So I want to, like I said, I just want to be a witness to anybody else who is out there. It's not just, we want you to be saved. We want you to believe in God. But if you don't, still know you're important. There is a work for you to do on this world. There's a work for you to do on this earth. There's somebody else who needs you and needs the gift inside of you. And I want you to be happy. I want you to live prosperous. And I don't want you to have to deal with the garbage that we had to go through for so long. I mean, John was saying 18 years. I mean, I held on to mine for so long. I don't even remember when it started. But I know that it was with me a large part of my life. So there is joy. There, like they say, there's gold at the end of the rainbow. And that gold is a happiness that nobody can take from you. No person can take it from you. Once you've gotten this healing from all the trauma that you've dealt with, and you're happy and you're excited, no one can take your joy.
And I think that just to piggyback on what Jamont said, he's so strategic with his shirt and the hashtag. You have to trust the process.
You sure do.
Because initially, it's not, you see these smiles on this, on this blog. I'm trying to make sure I say the correct word. This blog, you see these smiles, but in the beginning, it wasn't no smiles. In the beginning, it was a lot of attitude. It was a lot of, you can't talk to me that way. You don't know who you're talking to. It was a lot of anger. It was a lot of, I'm not doing this no more. Forget it. It was a lot of, okay, you right. And then it was a lot of, all right, okay. And then it was a lot of I'm going to try it your way. And then it eventually got to the joy that is in us now.
And a lot of tears. It's okay to cry.
It's okay. And men, it's okay to cry.
We know that.
I don't know.
To clarify for all of our viewers, she's talking about the beginning of our journey, not the beginning of this blog. Okay. We liked each other at the beginning of the blog.
Yeah, not this. We're talking about the beginning of the whole process of us becoming who we are as individuals today.
Correct.
For some, their process may have started sooner than others. For me, I know my process really started 2 years ago, of just kind of dealing with everything that ever happened in my life. I think, John, when did you say yours started?
About 3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. So when you think about it, Jamont, when did yours start?
Last year, 2017.
So look at that. You've got 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and we have endured the hurt, the pain, the craziness like a good soldier. And we are now here at this place where we can tell you there is, like he said, there is a pot of gold at the end of your rainbow. There's light at the end of your tunnel. There's all this stuff. And like we said, we didn't come on here to really to preach to anybody, because whether you're saved or unsaved, you still deserve to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. You still deserve to live a happy life. You still deserve to be in a place of peace and wholeness.
Yes.
Like, and I think that's the thing that we forget. It's great to be in church and to know who God is in the fullness of his power and all that stuff. But when the lights go off at the church and when I'm back at my house and it's just me, am I okay with just me? And a lot of people they can, like you said, they can rehearse the things that they've taught themselves in the mirror. They can give you all of the great Maya Angelou quotes, or they can give you all these wonderful mantras that they chant at the beginning of a day. But at the end of the day, am I okay with my own solitude? Am I okay with sitting there and it just being Tara or whatever your name may be, fill in your blank? But are you okay with that? And a lot of people, that's why it takes, like I said, that's why it takes a team, in my opinion. You need an accountability partner, somebody that can literally be like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I also see what you're saying, and what I see doesn't line up with what I hear.
Yes.
And because there are people out there that have the ability to not only hear you and can see you, they will get you to where you need to be. So that's all I had.
What you got, John?
Get healthy. Get better. That's what it boils down to. Live your best.
Yeah. You know, everybody wants to sing, I'm living my best life, but are you really living your best life?
You're living the illusion of a best life.
Exactly. I mean, let's keep it 100. That's the thing. Like, we use all these terminologies, but let's be real with one another. Because even us on this panel, we're going through stuff and we're working through stuff. But the thing that we're trying to encourage you is to do what we do. Identify what you need to work on.
Right.
Because everybody wants to be in a relationship. I can tell you right now, if I go on my Instagram and I start scrolling down, it's almost Valentine's Day. So everybody's talking about they want a boo, they want a relationship. But are you really ready for a relationship? Have you actually dealt with some things? Because the word says a man that findeth a wife findeth a good thing. And sometimes we don't
from the Lord.
Sometimes we don't find a wife. What we're finding is the issue that we don't want to deal with.
Right. You're right,
John.
I want a puppy.
Listen, hey, that's an issue too. Are you going to be able to take that puppy out on walks? Are you going to be able to take it to the vet? Are you going to be able to clean up the poop? Are you going to be able to clean up all the hair that comes with it?
Are you going to be able to feed it consistently?
You're going to be able to feed it consistently. You better get you a gigapet.
Digital. Okay.
Like throwback 3rd grade.
That's right.
Listen, I can't tell you how many times my gigapet died.
And see, the thing about it is, the gigapet has a reset button for a reason. Because it already knows you ain't going to be able to do what you need to do.
I was like, woo, day 3, I lost you there, but we reset you. You better resurrect gigapet.
But that's where we're at though. Like we have to know what we're ready for.
Right. And don't allow society to pressure you into thinking that you need to be in something that you're not ready for.
Listen, I'm excited that this Valentine's Day. I ain't got nothing I gotta do. I can go splurge on myself if I want to. You know what I'm saying? I can go take myself to I don't eat McDonald's, but I'll take myself to Ruby Tuesday or
you better treat
yourself. And treat yourself. That is nothing wrong with that. But you know why I'm there? I'm there because I'm happy with who I am now. Mm-hmm. I'm confident in who I am, and I've dealt with the issues of decisions that I've made that did detour a relationship that I was in. But there were decisions I made, so I had to deal with my decisions, not theirs. Not what they did, but what I did to cause some things to happen. And now I'm happy and I can be joyful and not worry about a stigma of what to get for Valentine's Day or what holidays come up next. No, I'm good. Now, if God brings somebody in my direction at that point in time, okay, you know, I'm going to have to go into prayer and meditation because he know I like to save my coins.
Not a fast.
But you just have to use wisdom because just because you're free doesn't mean that you don't need to seek God for counsel.
That's true.
It doesn't mean that you don't, and now I'm talking to the safe folk. It don't mean that you just do what you want to do willy-nilly, because the same thing that you get yourself out of and that God helps you get out of, you can put yourself back in.
Right.
If you're not aware or cautious of it. So that's my 2 cents. Hey, follow me on Instagram, Evo_Productions07. And that's the only thing that I'm on. I'm not other crazy stuff.
John,
where'd John go?
What are your social medias?
We gotta talk about this too, because Jonathan was eating peanuts or something. Like, dude, like, you constantly got food and you don't never snail mail me no food.
It will probably boil by the time it got to you.
Hey, that's okay. At least it's the thought that counts.
Dry ice. That's what dry ice is for.
How about I cash app you some money and you go to Ruby Tuesday?
Oh, I take Cash App all day long. You ain't got to say nothing but a word. But what's your social media, elder, pastor, minister, teacher, prophet?
All that. Okay.
Oh. Don't look like that. You know you the fold. The sheet, the fitted sheet.
As I was saying, on the gram, find me at JK Van, Facebook, JKVANN. Go to my website, countryboycooks.com, or follow my business page on the gram as well, Countryboy Cooks.
Amen. And I'm your moderator, Tara. And you can follow me on Instagram at The Real T Trust. Trust like a building, not like a bank. So TRUSS. Also, you can follow Talk Elevated on Instagram at Talk Elevated. And you can follow us on our Facebook page. And of course, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this broadcast. Again, we want to tell our dear good sis, Keisha, that we love her and we miss her.
Yes.
We hope everything is good with her family. And also, we want to wish her a happy birthday.
Happy early birthday.
Valentine's Day is her day. So we hope that she is showered with love. And that was pretty much it. Thank you guys so much.
Can I throw something real quick before you close out?
Go ahead.
Okay, so you see the sweater, right? So what I'm doing now is I'm giving people love because they show me love. So this shirt says "Pound Trust the Process." There's also something called hashtag. There you go. Hashtag. Sorry, I'm old school. Hashtag.
Like it's a house.
Pound on the keypad. Okay, shorty. All right.
All bishops are old.
Huh?
I said all bishops are old.
That's
Hey,
true.
praise the Lord. Hey, but listen, hit up the hashtag Trust the Process. Also, God is engineering. God, faith over fear. But definitely check them out on Instagram. If you put the hashtag in, you'll see it's a big following. But I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I got more shirts coming. We're gonna do this thing the right way.
Yep. So join us the same bat time, same bat channel next week at 9:30.
What's the new subject?
Our subject for next week, because this is kind of like wrapping up the relationship portion. We're actually going to dive in to relationship over religion.
What?
So what we're going to segue into is actually understanding about relationships in church, not necessarily boyfriend, girlfriend, but how we need to develop a relationship with Christ. So that is the reason why we talked about overcoming trauma, because your trauma should lead you back to Christ. So I hope that you all have a very blessed night. Thank you so much to JK Van and to Jamont, Mr. Evo, the bishop, the diocesan suffragan bishop. Thank you all for watching. Please, again, make sure that you thumbs up this video, like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions that you would like for us to answer, feel free to email us at asktalkelevated@talkelevated.com, and we'll be more than happy to answer them live on the show. Of course, we will protect your identity because, hey, HIPAA compliancy is what we need. Talk to you all later. Love you with the love of the Lord. Bye.
Peace.